That's Frankenheimer's chair with the leather with his name on it. I didn't know who Frankenheimer was before I ended up in his movie. I had seen The Manchurian Candidate, and that was about it. And any other movies that he's ever done, I don't even really know that he was the director. I learned about Frankenheimer by the fact that I was now in one of his movies. Your average movie watcher doesn't necessarily care who the director was, right? They just hear from their friends it was a good movie. I knew Jürgen Prochnow because I'd seen Das Boot. That was it. I was excited by that. Even here in Calgary, in the middle of the prairies, where everybody's unilingual, everybody was talking about, oh, have you seen the boat? Oh, in German it's called Das Boot. For some of it, we sat in a room with the other extras, just talking, and for some of it, we had to sit in the bar. I was one of the two guys sitting at the bar when. Do you remember the scene in the movie when the Soviet colonel has brought the young girl into the bar and is holding a gun on her, and all of the guests have left except for two who are, I think, afraid to move, or they were told to stay. So I was one of the ones that remained. So I was in the original bar scene where there was lots of people, and then also I was in this sort of quiet, tense one. But it's really probably, I don't know, how long you can see me is probably less than 30 seconds. And the whole scene that I was part of was, I'm sure less than 4 minutes. To me, it's amazing that it takes 4 days to shoot that, or five. It was 5 days. They may have started parts of it in '88. It takes many months, obviously, and they needed the winter season. When I was involved, I think it was March of '89. I would always have been interested in something this interesting, but my involvement with acting, for instance, was limited to being in. We had a lay theater group in Calgary run by as a subgroup of the German Canadian club called Die Kleine Bühne am Bow. The Bow River is the river that flows through Calgary. And actually, that was how I got recruited for the movie because they needed German speaking extras in case there's some background conversation that gets heard. It needs to actually be German, right? So I ended up knowing many of the other extras in that film. The bartender and the bartender's wife were people that I knew from the theater group. All the people in the dancing scene. There's a dancing scene because there's a wedding happening in the hotel, and everybody in that shot I actually know. So that's kind of interesting. They were, the question is, in a city in the middle of the prairie in North America, where do you find German-speaking extras? And that was one of their solutions. I signed on to get, I think it was $112 Canadian dollars per day as a extra, and then they decided that between me and villager number one, or villager number two, sorry, I was villager number one, they would put a microphone on the bar. And the union rules say that if there's a microphone by you where they may blend in the sound, then they have to pay you more. And I suddenly was getting $500 per day. So then I became this sort of super extra. Yeah, I felt bad about that. The senior villager there was Kurt Damerai, and he's directly from Austria, and I felt that he should be villager number one, and I should be villager number two, but I had no say in that decision. We had to go for an audition with a Calgary-based company that supplies equipment and extras and food and that kind of thing for companies that are making a movie in our area. And I guess I passed the audition. So then I was in. And a lot of the time, so I went to my boss. I had, of course, a regular job at the time. I went to my boss and I said, "This is a really neat thing I would like to do." They said it should take 1 or 2 days. And he says, "Yeah, go have fun." And it took 5 days. So I kept having to call my boss and say, can I stay another day? I mean, I have to stay another day. I'm in the movie. They can't take me out now, right? So he was getting a little upset. He says, he says you may be making $500 a day, but that's also the only money you'll get all year. So, in other words, don't quit your day job. I was also impressed by attention to detail. For instance, in the bar, on the blackboard behind the bar, they had, the daily special Tagesmenü, and it was in German handwriting. There is a difference between North American handwriting and German handwriting, and they did it correctly. They had a German write it. We make our H's and our K's a little bit differently than Germans do. It's very subtle, but as a high school student, when I went to Dillenburg in Hessen, this is one of the first things I noticed. Right? You notice everything. How many little differences there are. Like, for instance, in Europe, people don't use doorknobs. We have circular knobs on our doors, which I guess you would call them Türknäufe, as opposed to a the klinke is the handle, right? Door handle. So in order for something here to be used as a set for something that's supposed to be happening in Europe, you have to change all of these little things. So while I was impressed by a lot of the attention to detail, I also noticed that they failed to obscure a North American electrical outlet over the bar. Our electrical outlets look different. Well, we use 110 volts, and the plug-in, the Stecker, has flat blades on it instead of round prongs. So it's quite recognizably North American. Another little thing that I noticed was, I think the American producers of the film thought, oh, this is perfect. Canada uses kilometers. So when they show Colonel Knowles driving his, I forget what kind of sports car he had. It was probably a Porsche or something. Yeah, down the road, there's a sign that says, 100 kmh, right? Uh, but it's the wrong shape. It's the North American standard of a rectangle for a speed limit sign. And in Europe, they're all round. I'm obviously a perfectionist, and perhaps my ideal job would be to help create the proper sets for movies and try to make them authentic in these small respects, right? But they did other things, like they took out the North American style payphone that was on in the entrance to the hotel. The hotel was called Zum Golden Rössel in German, but it was really just a restaurant. There was no rooms. It was not a hotel, and it was called the Golden Crown. Sorry, Golden Crown, the Rose and Crown, in the town of Canmore, at the edge of the mountains near Calgary. A beautiful restaurant, and my wife and I still go there, and I always remember being in the movie there. But they created some stairs that led to a second story, and they put up a sign on the wall that said Zimmer, and they had an arrow pointing up. But of course, there's nothing up there. There was it was just the corridor. And in the entranceway to the Rose and Crown, there was a Canadian public phone, a payphone, and they took that off the wall and they put up a West German payphone. And you can tell because having spent time in Germany, I was familiar with these things. I thought, wow, that's good that they did that. Then I was really disappointed to see that they failed to cover the electrical outlet. They didn't have to convert it. They just had to put like a beer bottle in front of it or something like that, right? For a long time, it continued to look like that, and now they've remodeled it. It's not entirely different, but it's not as good as it was. They've made some high tables with some high seats at them instead of the low tables. It's not as comfortable anymore. But there's a part of the restaurant that my wife and I go and sit on regular chairs. We don't want to sit on high stools, bar stools. Well, they would do like a dozen or more takes for each scene, or even small part of a scene, and I could not tell what the director thought needed to be redone or why he did so many. But I started to understand why it costs so many millions of dollars to make a movie. I think they could have made the same movie and it would have been hardly different at all for a fraction of the cost if they just didn't do so many takes. But there's also a reputation factor. I think if you make a movie and it doesn't cost enough, nobody will believe that it's a good movie. There should be a medium where you, for most scenes, only need 3 to 5 takes, and then for special ones, you do more. That would be ideal. One of the things they did was they actually brought snow in trucks to put in the parking lot of the Rose and Crown pub. so that there would be sufficient snow around, because the concrete warms up in the sun, and in March it's warm enough that the snow is disappearing. But there was lots and lots of snow around us. The snow gets very deep in the mountains, so it was easy to send a truck in and just fill it with snow and bring it and distribute it over the parking lot. And I'm sure it was a lot of work for whoever filled the truck. They must have used some heavy equipment for that. And the planning that goes into that, because you have to be prepared. You have to have the equipment in the truck. I spent 87 and 88 at the FU in West Berlin, and studying linguistics. So I was in the divided Berlin, and I remember a few things vividly. I remember that in that year, I heard on the radio in the car that belonged to my wife that some fellow had come across, somehow had crossed the border into West Berlin from East Berlin, and announced himself at a local police station, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, and everybody was happy about this. And I thought, wow, what did that guy do? How did he get across? And we used to drive between West Berlin and Bielefeld. My first wife came from the only 15 kilometers away from the old Maschmeyer Hof, but we'd drive through Helmstedt, and we did that on a Sunday at 10 a.m. in the morning. And then later that day, about 4 or 5 hours later, somebody tried to drive through without stopping, and the East Germans shot into the car and killed the people in the car on the same day at the same crossing that we had just crossed at, and which we also had to cross going back. And this is in 1987 or 88, late 87, early 88. And if these people had just waited 2 years, but nobody knew. That's how much of a surprise it was. I had a couple of experiences that really were. I guess I'm glad I had them, because it's part of a full life and part of an understanding of what was going on then. I work with people now, 25-year-old engineers that have no idea. Shortly after I met the girl who became my first wife, I was in Bielefeld, and I needed to go back to Berlin to continue my studies. And she said, I want to come with you, but my passport is in my apartment in Bielefeld. But I don't think I need it, because Germans can just show their EU card and get through the border. Well, she didn't know it, but that was true for West Berlin residents. It was not true for West German residents. So I had gotten a ride through a Mitfahrgelegenheit, through the Zentrale at the university. So some guy named Matthias that I often got a ride with going to West Germany, because he also visited his parents in the same area. He picked me and my girlfriend up and drove back to the border. And then when they asked her for her passport, she said, "Well, here's my ID card." And they didn't explain why, but they asked her to get out, and they took her away for over an hour. And I'm sitting in the car, sweating, and Matthias is wondering, oh shit, what's going on, right? And I'm thinking, well, this is the part of the movie where James Bond goes and rescues his girlfriend, right? But I'm not James Bond. And we had a fopo watching our car, and finally she came back, and they had taken pictures of her, accused her of wanting to enter for espionage purposes, made her pay for the pictures, because they said, well, we're not going to pay for pictures, because you're spying. And then they let her get back in the car and let her continue. So you can see that it's just bullshit. They just wanted some of her money, West currency, right? If she's a spy, why are they letting her in? And then the policeman who was watching our car came and talked to Matthias, and he says, "Oh, he says, you're lucky. The boss was in a good mood today. Have you considered what an appropriate gift might be for the boss?" And I just looked at Matthias, and he's thinking quickly, like, "Oh man, what do I say here, right?" And he said, "I would like to give your boss a gift, but I'm afraid that it would be misinterpreted as a bribe." And so the guy just slapped the roof of our car and said, "Weiterfahren." That was it. Conversation over. And so I guess that was one of the possible correct answers. And so, when you have experiences like that, or another time, I think we may have been married by this point. We're driving back in her car, and they would give you a transit visum, the piece of paper that they stick in your passport with the time and date stamped on it, and they would look at it when you exited at Helmstedt to see how long it took you. They would give you time to drive at 100 kilometers per hour, not faster. They expected you may wish to stop and get gasoline and eat something at the Intertankstelle, and pee, because even the 10 penny pieces, the Westmark pieces that we threw in when we took a pee, were valuable to them. And there was also a duty-free shop, so you could buy Blaupunkt and Grundig stereos, perfume and everything for without paying duty because you're in transit. So if it took about, I don't know, it was maybe 2.5 hours. Normally they give you like 3 to 3.5 hours. But if you took too short or too long, you were in trouble. We go in. We're on the transit route now, and we're halfway there. And my wife says, "Oh, look at the transit visa that they put into your passport. It says Australia." Because of course my passport was Canada. And they look similar, but the guy wrote Australia. It had the right number on it, but the wrong country. And now it's like, oh, what do we do? You're not supposed to turn around and go back. You're in big trouble if you don't go through. But if I draw their attention to it and I say, I think that your colleague made a mistake here, they would say, we don't make mistakes. Come in and interrogate me, right? If I say nothing, they might think I'm trying to get away with something. Oh, I don't know. Here's a guy. I don't know. He kind of looks German. He speaks German. Did he find one of these pieces of paper blowing around? It had the wrong country on it, but he had a fake Canadian passport, so now he's trying to mix the two, or. I didn't know what to do, but I do know that they shoot people at Helmstedt. So when we got there, I decided to give him, the guard, my passport with the transit visa paper in it and say nothing. And probably either they would not notice, or if they did notice, they would think, oh, we made a mistake, but we don't like to admit that we made a mistake. So we'll just say nothing. And that's what happened. So we got through. But the tenseness. The fellow in the white jacket with the sunglasses on, he's the makeup artist. I had never had movie makeup put on me before, but before, at the start of every day, each of us extras would go into Jorge's trailer. That was his name, and he would put makeup on us. It was great. The other shot here shows the interior of the bar with the bright lighting that you can see for when they make movies, right? At a moment when they're not actually filming. I don't think they're actually filming here either, but you can see the two major actors standing together. Here's a picture also of one of the cameras that they used. I mean, it looks like it's held together by tape and bubble gum. It looks highly customized. It has, stickers on it like somebody's hot rod car or something like that. Me pretending to be held up by one of the MPs. This is because we're outside taking a break. You can see what the mountains look like around Canmore, where we live. These are the Western Rocky Mountains. You can see the handwriting on the back there. That's the handwriting that I'm referring to that is accurate. And behind Jürgen Prochnow, you would see on the wall a North American style electrical outlet, but I think he's blocking it so we can't see it right there. I'm standing beside a guy who did a really good job of portraying a West Berlin or West German policeman. That may be the only time in my life that I have my name on a movie set trailer door. It's interesting that Jurgen himself, I think, was not very conversant with IMDb or the internet, so he didn't do a good job of managing his IMDb presence. Of course, he was there, but the picture that ended up being his only picture on his website for his name was this picture with me in it. If you looked up Jürgen Prochnow, you saw Kyle Maschmeyer because they get linked. When you put the pictures on there, you say if you're with another actor, right? It's like tagging a photo. So that was the only thing that IMDb could find. Now, of course, it's different. But for a long time, if you looked up Jürgen Prochnow, you saw me. And I found him to be more approachable than Roy Scheider. Roy, I don't know. He had a sort of a, what do you call it, a servant who followed him around combing his hair all the time and spraying stuff on him to try and make him look perfect. I don't know. I guess it's what you do if you're a multi-million-dollar American actor. And Jurgen was just more like a regular guy, right? He'd comb his hair, or the makeup guy would do it once, and then that was good. He'd just stay that way. In that one picture of Jürgen Prochnow and Roy Scheider walking across the parking lot talking to each other, you can see there's a big wet spot on the concrete. That's where there was a big pile of snow and it melted. So they would, when they needed it, they would bring more snow and put it there. The part where they did their fighting in the water, the water was really the water of a creek near Calgary that comes out of the mountains. It's very cold. It's called Bragg Creek, and I know from talking to the other extras who were involved in that part of the movie. Remember, I was sitting there sometimes for half the day with these people talking to them. That they had the challenge of, if you walk across the snow, you leave footprints. So if you want to do multiple takes of the same scene, but it's supposed to be virgin snow, you have a problem. Sometimes you can just move everybody to a different part of the snow and do it again. But what they would do is, there was a helicopter in the movie, right? They'd bring the helicopter over and have it hover over an area to blow the snow to fill in all the footprints and make it look smooth again. And they said it was really cold. If you were anywhere near where that helicopter was, you were getting a face full of snow all the time. And also, it's a good thing that they filmed that before they did this stuff at the Rose and Crown pub, because in March, obviously the snow's starting to melt, and you would have problems. They had to, reverse the shooting order. I talked to somebody also who was providing the props. They worked for the Calgary company that provided them. They said they got them from another company overseas that specialized in providing things like Soviet paraphernalia. And they said these ones, a lot of them come from Afghanistan. These uniform coats and the hats and stuff like that, right? And they said, "Look at this," and they showed me one, and there was a bullet hole through it. You stick your finger right through. I mean, the bullet had gone through one piece of cloth, and then underneath that there was another part of the coat that goes under the same spot, and the hole went through there too. So this is not a hole from a moth. This is a hole from a bullet. So that was interesting. There's a cameraman, and beside him there's a fellow in a beige jacket and beige pants. A white bearded gentleman. I think I knew at the time who this guy was, but I don't know his name. He was sort of like the right hand man of John Frankenheimer in this movie. So we saw actually more of him than Frankenheimer, but we did see a lot of Frankenheimer too. So he seemed very focused. He seemed like anyone that spoke to him kept their sentences short, like they didn't want to bother him with details. They knew that he's a busy man. There's a little bit of respect and awe there, I'm sure, but also maybe they didn't want to have him get upset. But he never got upset that I saw, not on this movie. And then I wonder, he would go and he would be beside the cameraman and telling him things and stuff like that. But he had no spare cycles, CPU cycles left over to really talk to anybody else. There's certainly no interaction with just extras like me. Yeah, here I am. I can go out and I can stand around and talk to Jürgen Prochnow, but I can't talk to John Frankenheimer. And the only guy that I knew prior to being in this movie was Prochnow. I mean, I knew Roy Scheider as well, right? But I don't know. It seems like on the movie set, even Prochnow seemed like just a low animal on the rung. We're all just working for Frankenheimer, you know what I mean? Except Scheider. Scheider had, he was in his trailer all the time. He'd only come out to do his part of the scene, and then he had his servant spraying him and combing him and stuff before he did anything. And then he would disappear back into his trailer. I'm not saying that Roy Scheider might be a great guy to talk to, but you'd never know. I could never talk to him, so I would never find that out, right? For those viewers that have no relationship to the Cold War time, they also are missing one of the points of the movie, which was that we are very close to a situation that no one wants. Because in those days, we all felt that we are, one failed diplomatic action away from a bad result for everybody, right? You see what they did to the front of the building. They've put, the Fachwerk sort of structure is visible, and lots of brown wood. They replaced the rose and crown sign with one that was this sort of burgundy brown that says "Zum Goldenen Rössel." Do you see it up in the right there? And they made the building look like it had more than one business in it. Really, it's all just the restaurant. But they put this. It says Uhrmacher, I think. The pink part or the rose colored. Yeah, we say pink. Germans wouldn't call that pink. When they made the movie, they never showed the green part that's above the brown wood. It went after they redid the front. All of the shots were aimed low so that you wouldn't see any of the non-altered part of the building. But they changed more of it than I thought they would. Right? Like it also showed me why movies are so expensive to make. If you were in the bar shooting, then it's complete discipline. If you were in the extras room talking to the other people who worked on different parts of the movie, then it was relaxed. They had somebody come around. I had to. I had a terrible sinus headache for most of this 5 days because I had occasionally smoked, but I didn't smoke regularly. And they asked, well, can you be smoking a cigarette in the bar here? And I said, okay, sure. But then I had to have this cigarette by me the entire 5 days, all the time, and it had to be the same length all the time. So there was a guy who would come through and make sure that the level of the fake beer in our beer glasses was the same. It was alcohol-free beer. The union rules say it has to be alcohol-free, and he'd give us a new cigarette all the time, right? But then I'd have to smoke the cigarette down until it was the same length as in the previous scene. And then to make it worse, they put in fake smoke because, at least in those days, all bars here and in Europe were full of smoke from smokers, right? So they use the fake smoke generators that they use in concerts and stuff like that, and it kind of smells a little bit perfumey, and it just really wrecked. It gave me a sinus headache the whole time, and I thought this is not okay. So it's now like I don't know 1 o'clock in the morning, and the Soviet colonel is holding this girl hostage in the bar, and there's nobody left in the bar for hours. It's been empty, but they're still putting the fake smoke in here. There was a scene where Scheider would be talking to Harry Dean Stanton in, some big building with long hallways. What they used for that was a building in Calgary called the Mawata Armory that is actually owned and operated by our military. More than half of the city of Calgary has been built since 1980. To have an old building like this around is really nice. There were articles in the local newspaper about the fact that a movie was being made near where we were. So you can see there's on the next picture, uh, it's mentioned in the newspaper. I never saw it. I never saw it in a cinema because it only ran for 5 weeks. I thought I had time. It wasn't doing well financially. I don't think they made their money back on this movie. It kind of went straight to video after that. It's too bad. I mean, partly it was off topic. Partly I don't know. Even while I was watching the part that I was in, I felt that I would have, who am I compared to John Frankenheimer? But I would have been asking them to do things differently, say it again, but differently. When Laura, the Czech girl, was cleaning the boot of the Soviet colonel, it just didn't look convincing to me. I don't know. I'm not sure that John Frankenheimer's heart was in this one. You know, to me, the movie that I was part of feels like a 2.5 out of 5. I think that's accurate. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know. The best thing about it was I got to be in it. Well, then I had to wait for it to come out at Blockbuster, and then I got a copy. And of course, I made my own copy of the Blockbuster video, which is I still have in the garage. It's all, got distortion from going through many Canadian summers and winters in the garage. So was it released as Powerplay originally in German too? That's too bad because I think one of the neatest things about the movie is its title. You know what the Fourth War, well, there's a quote in there, right? It was Einstein saying that he doesn't know what weapons would be used in the Third World War, but the fourth one would be fought with sticks and stones. So it's a great title, unless maybe, Der Vierte Krieg was already taken in the German namespace. I don't know. You asked whether I was irritated to be contacted, and the answer is no, because this was a very special thing in my life that I did. I did it at a time when I was still married to my first wife, so my second wife doesn't really know anything about this. Nobody else cares. The movie wasn't extremely popular, so hardly anybody has ever seen it. In fact, it had a very short run in the theaters, and I think it also came out at the wrong time. In 1988, nobody understood yet that by 1990 people would be walking across borders that they would get shot for before. I mean, everybody was talking about the Iron Curtain, but it was not about the risk of there being another world war. It was about how it's so nice that that risk is ending. So the whole movie suddenly seemed to be about a risk that wasn't a risk anymore.